And for a closer look, we're joined by Dr. Mustafa Izzuddin, Senior International Affairs Analyst at Solaris Strategies Singapore. Evening, Dr. Mustafa. So do you think the Prime Minister's talking points accurately reflected and, perhaps eased the top concerns facing Singaporeans at this current moment?
Yeah, it certainly did. His speech captured the social, political and economic pulse of the current situation, and also where do we go from here. I think it's a speech that's wide-ranging, clear-sighted, far-sighted, and also candid as well. It also outlined the government's priorities for this new parliament, the focus being Singapore and Singaporeans. And I think the top on the most minds of Singaporeans is COVID-19 and the fallout from COVID-19 and the devastating impact it's had on the economy. So by addressing that substantively in his speech, I think he certainly did reflect the current mood and the current pulse in Singapore.
Yeah, let's stay with that thought. He did touch on Singapore's COVID-19 response and how, while overall generally good, there were shortcomings. Did that surprise you that he made those remarks?
No, it didn't surprise me. I think, no government is perfect. And every government has its flaws. So by addressing the shortcomings directly in his speech, I think it shows the human side of the government. It also shows that the government is prepared to learn the lessons of COVID-19 and not to repeat those lessons and do better the next time. So I think all of that shows a hallmark of effective governance in Singapore. It also shows that the government is willing to be more communicative, also to listen attentively to ground sentiments. So I think all of this bodes well for our political landscape. And also, again, about the speech itself, there were pressing challenges and problems on the one hand, but I think the Prime Minister also talked about hope, talked about cause for optimism, and also silver lining. So things are going to get better as we navigate this different future that's influenced by COVID-19.
Yeah, speaking of listening to the ground sentiment, Prime Minister said that the government will always be on the side of Singaporeans when it comes to economic policy and jobs. Now, between that and still attracting foreign investment, how fine is this balance, in terms of actual implementation?
I think this balance has always been fine, and I think it's been very tricky as well. This balance has had to be shifted and adjusted depending on the needs of the economy, economic growth, level of foreign investments. So it's always a balance that has to be struck very finely by the government of the day. But I think what is very, very clear in the Prime Minister's speech is the fundamental priorities has to be very clear, which is that although foreign workforce and foreign investments are very important for Singapore, it must not come at the expense of Singaporeans. And rather, it should create opportunities, job opportunities for Singaporeans. So I think, again, this is the kind of speech that provides the calming influence as well as reassurance for Singaporeans, particularly during this pandemic period and as we enter a post-pandemic period as well.
And we saw the leader of the opposition engage the Prime Minister for the first time since taking on the role. What's your assessment of the debate?
Well, I found it very lively, healthy, substantive. I think this bilateral exchange, it's an encouraging prelude to what we can expect in future parliamentary sittings. I think it's also an exchange that shows a level of respect for each other's position. So on the one hand, the Prime Minister of Singapore, and on the other hand, you have got the leader of the opposition. So I think, and also the bilateral exchange sets the tone and expectations for the rest of their parliamentary colleagues, whether you're from the ruling party or the opposition, to engage in open, constructive, healthy and robust debates in Parliament. And if you do that, I think it bodes well for parliamentary debates in general and also for our political landscape, which continues to change and mature year on year.
Well, you mentioned that the tone of the debate in Parliament, expected to shift, especially with more opposition voices. How will that actually impact policy making then?
I think it would have a positive and profound impact on policy making because of diversity and diverse voices that you see in Parliament. Now, this diversity and diverse voices does not just come from the opposition, which we would expect that to be, but also from the backbenchers of the ruling party as well. So I think this, if you harness the diversity of voices in Parliament well enough, I think you'll see a profound and positive impact on policy making. And also, I think this is what would be expected by Singaporeans of the parliamentary sittings we're having so far, and the results, obviously, from the last election as well. So yes, I think if harnessed well, the diversity and the diverse voices that we have seen through the speeches in Parliament, and also the exchange between the leader of the opposition and the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, I think all this bodes well for our political landscape in Singapore, as well as for our policy making.
Okay, well, thank you for your thoughts this evening. As always, Dr. Mustafa Izzuddin, Senior Lecturer at the National University of Singapore.